Hello friends, I'm George, the nice smelling gentleman. Welcome back to the channel guys. I hope that all of you are doing well. About 10 days ago I did a video review of this fragrance, My Trady Blue from Maison Alhambra. It's a sort of an interesting hybrid between Bleu de Chanel EDP and Bleu de Chanel Parfum. I quite like the fragrance and my review was quite positive on this one, but for some reason this video sparkled quite a debate in the comment section after I uploaded the video. Some people were calling me out because in their opinion I was liking pretty much every fragrance that I tried. Other people were defending me, so that got me thinking, what's a good way to try to avoid being scammed when you buy cologne and cheap fragrances that are hyped up. So in today's video I'm going to share with you 3 pieces of advice on how to not get scammed when you buy a cologne or a cheap fragrance. Now, first of all, I want to start out by saying that I love cologne fragrances. My channel has been pretty much all about cologne fragrances for the past half a year, even longer than that, because people seem to enjoy this type of content and I actually enjoy making this type of content as well. So I'm not going to bash on clones. Today I'm going to try to help you out avoiding too hyped up fragrances or getting scammed when you buy a cologne fragrance. Now, the first advice that I'm going to share with you, the first thing is that it will be about your mindset when you approach a certain cologne fragrance. You need to keep your expectations at check, what you're expecting out of the cologne fragrance that you're buying. I've prepared a simple sort of a way to show you that to you. On one hand, here I have a fragrance from the house of Zimaya that's called Royal Paragon. This fragrance is a sort of a hybrid clone between Parfum de Marly's Layton and Layton Exclusive, and on the other hand I have a bottle of the Real Layton. The Real Layton, a 75 milliliter bottle size. Around here where I live, this usually costs somewhere between 150 and 160 euros, and that's for a 75 milliliter bottle. And Royal Paragon from Zimaya usually costs around about 15-16 euros, and this fragrance comes in a 100 milliliter bottle size. So we're talking of at least 10 times difference when it comes to the price tag. 15 euros versus 115 euros. So, at that price difference, there should be, and there are some differences when it comes to the quality of the scent of the whole fragrance. You should be absolutely sure that Parfum de Marly's are using higher quality ingredients when they are creating this fragrance compared to what the Zimaya have used to create Royal Paragon. That's a 10-time difference in price. I'm going to say that again. So it's that kind of a difference. There's no way that the cheaper fragrance will have the same quality scent-wise, it will have the same performance, or it will feel identical to the original scent. There's no way at that price point. Now, when it comes to designer and niche fragrances, a lot of the pricing is actually down not to the ingredients but other things like research and development, marketing, paying off the perfumer who created the fragrance, and probably the biggest price difference comes down to the fact that you're paying for a brand image with the original scents. Cologne houses, they don't have to pay for this kind of stuff, but still, at the end of the day, there should be, and there are, some differences when it comes to the quality of the scents that you compare, the cologne and the original, and the cologne fragrance will always feel inferior compared to the original. So my first piece of advice is to try to keep your expectations at check when you're approaching a cologne fragrance. My second piece of advice will be, don't fall for the initial hype of a certain fragrance when it gets released. And what I mean by that? Usually, when a new cologne comes on the markets nowadays, all the big YouTube channels, influencers and whatnot will try to cover it, and probably most of them will try to hype it up. Now, I'm not going to bash, the fellow YouTube reviewers and influencers, but when you're dealing with the bigger channels, the bigger influencers, more often than not, a certain economical interest will probably be involved in the hyping up of a certain fragrance. You'll get a referral code, something like a discount code in the description of the video, and probably the person who is hyping up that new fragrance probably gets a bit of a cut of the sales, and there's nothing bad about that. But just keep in mind that when it comes to new fragrance releases, new clones releases, bigger influencers influencers definitely have to approach their opinion with a little bit of cautiousness, let's call it that. One way to avoid that, in my opinion, what I'm doing is when a certain fragrance gets released, then I watch a few of the big YouTube channels doing reviews, and if they praise that fragrance, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for the same review of the same fragrance, but by a smaller YouTuber, someone who doesn't have affiliate links, who doesn't have discount codes in the description of their videos, because those people, they usually don't have an economical interest to try to promote a certain fragrance. If that fragrance gets a positive review from some let's call it a small time YouTuber, then I will start thinking that this fragrance actually maybe is deserving of all the hype. And then there's another way to try to sort of triple check everything. You can go on sites like Fragrantica, like Perfumo. You can join some Facebook groups who share your hobby, your fragrance hobby, and try to search out for more experience from people who already own this type of fragrance. If on those third places there's also that fragrance also receives quite a lot of praise, then the chances are very high that this fragrance actually is really, really good. So my second piece of advice is always try to double or even triple check a certain hyped up fragrance before you pull the trigger on purchasing it. And my third and probably most important piece of advice will be to always try to sample the fragrances that you're buying. Never commit to a blind purchase when it comes to fragrances. Fragrance taste can be very subjective, so try to sample as much as possible. I know that with Middle Eastern fragrances, with cologne fragrances, it can be a little bit hard to actually try and sample something, but nowadays I think those type of scents, they become more and more popular, and chances are pretty high that somewhere near around you there going to be a small time shop or big retailer that actually sells Middle Eastern scents. So try to look for a place where you can go and test physically, basically test that scent. If that's not possible, then there's another way. More and more sites offer samples. You can buy decants, you can buy a 2-3 milliliter decant of a certain scent that has got you intrigued. Try to sample it, try to buy a decant, test it out before you actually commit to a blind buy purchase. And there's even again a third way. Try to join Facebook groups. Nowadays there are quite a few big Facebook groups that a lot of enthusiasts like yourself, someone who's interested in fragrances, try to look around for opinions on a certain fragrance, but try to avoid blind buying fragrances as much as possible. I know that especially Middle Eastern fragrances tend to be very cheap, and people think it's nothing, $15-20 or something. Even if I don't like it, that's not a lot of money. But when that's one time purchase of $20 or 20 euros is nothing. In reality, it is nothing. But if you do it a second time, a third time, a fifth time, 10 times, that costs tend to pile up over time. A few months down the road, you could have spent like $100, $200, $500 on blind purchases that ended up being disappointments for you. And those costs, they add up and they can run you in financial trouble. At the end of the day, fragrances, they are a luxury thing. They're not commodities. They're not necessities. You can live without fragrances, but you cannot live without clothes, you cannot live without paying your rent, or you cannot live without paying for your food. So try to approach fragrances like that. Try to sample as much as possible. Try to avoid blind buying fragrances as much as possible. Try to go and test them in store physically as much as possible. Just avoid blind purchases. And so at the end of the video, just as a quick summary, the 3 steps that I think you should follow so you don't get scammed or you don't end up spending too much money on cologne fragrances or cheap fragrances. The first step is try to keep your expectations at check when you're buying a certain cheap fragrance. Never have too high expectations out of a cheap or a cologne fragrance. The second piece of advice for me is never fall for the initial hype of a certain fragrance. Try to double check, try to triple check as much as possible a certain scent before you actually commit to a full buying. And the third piece of advice, probably the most important one, is never try to blind purchase a fragrance. Try to sample as much as possible. Try to get your hands on a real bottle as much as possible just to try it out yourself, and don't do blind purchases. I hope that you found today's video interesting. If you did, give it a like, and I also hope that you're going to join me in the next one. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.